In today's world, isn't it crazy how some people can't even sit through a movie anymore without scrolling through TikTok intermittently throughout watching it? How some people can't even stay present in conversation, without thinking about something else, without directing their eye contact to something else, or losing attention when they're speaking to you. We're living in a world where focus is valuable, where focus is a sought after skill. If we went back 50 years, not even like that far back in time, that wouldn't even be considered a skill. Focus would just be a given. It would just be something everyone practices, something people were naturally brought up to have, because we didn't have these quick little fixes where we get 30-second clips of the entertainment continuously, infinitely, for however long we want. They didn't have any of that. They didn't have the detriment of that. What we see as a luxury is actually damaging our focus beyond repair. And it's mainly by things such as TikTok, short form content, and it's ruining our attention span, it's ruining our focus, it's ruining our ability to stay present in conversation, and reducing the value things like face-to-face conversation and intimacy have towards us, the value which they have for us. Focus is becoming something we have to learn. It's becoming a skill we have to seek after. People don't read anymore. People don't have to maintain their focus for nearly as long as people would have had to do back in the day. I forget what YouTube channel this was, but if I find it, I'll credit them there. But they brought up this point where people back in the day would have to watch presidential debates in person, and they lasted up to 3 hours. People had to maintain their focus and listen to complex ideas debated between one candidate and the other for up to 3 hours with no stimulus, nothing like that, and people would gladly sit there and watch it. The amount of people who could probably focus and do that these days would probably be a very small handful. Things are not getting any better focus wise. So I want to try and give you some advice on things that I've personally found to build my focus, because again, I've had a lot of issues coming up with throughout my self-improvement journey. I've had a lot of detriments, and focus has been a big one. I played video games far too much. I overconsumed TikTok far too much. I remember I was in between like Overwatch lobbies waiting for me to like load into the game, where I was just sitting in a queue, and sometimes I'd be up to like 15 minutes. Throughout the whole 15 minutes, I'd just be on TikTok scrolling the entire time. Then I'd play the game, I'd queue, stay on TikTok again, and then play the game. And that wasn't just purely for that. Every single game which had a queue, even if it was like for the smallest amount of the time, I couldn't stay focused for that. So I'd have to open TikTok, even if it was just 30 seconds, I'd be on there 30 seconds while I was in the game queue. And then I'd, continue to play and just feed into that cycle again. So I have had a lot of issues with focus. And I'm proud to say that I've come a very long way since then. My focus isn't absolutely perfect, not by any means. I always have times where I struggle to focus, but they are drastically less than it was back in the day. I can happily sit through a 2-hour documentary and not lose focus, and I can happily read for up to like an hour each day and stay focused on that topic, which would have been something I would have absolutely dreaded to even contemplate if I was trying to try and do that back then. So I think I'm in a pretty good place to talk about focus. So firstly, I want to say, it's leading on from what I just previously said, a really good way to build your focus is to start reading. And this can be through whatever, if you want to buy a Kindle, if you want to read paperback, if you want to read, fiction, non-fiction, wherever you want to start. But I made a video previously, I think the title was like, this is why you still have brain rot or something. But I mentioned how if you're going to consume entertainment, you need to be doing something that's educational and entertaining. and reading is the best source for that. Now, not only is reading educational and entertaining, meaning that, you know, you're gonna get something out of it while being entertained, reading is also one of the best ways to build and, you know, upgrade your focus, because you're gonna have to sit there, you know, for the entire chapter, for the entire time, contemplating on this idea, following the plot, following the story, all while having to maintain your focus and remember, you know, all the, you know, ideas this author comes up with if you're reading non-fiction, or like, you know, following the plot or whatever it is for that entire time. And, you know, you'll eventually get engrossed in it and it won't be as much of a burden to do. But initially it probably might be. You know, reading can be seen as a, like, kind of a nerdy thing by a lot of people these days, which I don't get even in the slightest, because like that is where the most authentic forms of knowledge and like information come from. So if that's your mindset and things, you just need to grow up, if I'm being honest. Again, if you want to use it as a tool to build your focus, it definitely is one of the best things you can do, because, you know, it's great to listen to podcasts, you know, that listening to like 2-hour episodes like that, you know, they can probably bring you a lot of value too, but not nearly as much as reading can do for your focus. Because in podcasts, you've got the fancy cuts, the edits, the stuff like that, the camera moving from this angle to there, like, you know, sometimes they're formulated in a way where it recognizes that your focus isn't always going to be, you know, directly on point. It implements these things. But when you're reading a book, it ain't got no flashy camera angles or anything like that. So you've got to maintain your focus, and you'll learn to really enjoy it. You'll learn to, you know, get engrossed in whatever you're reading, take the knowledge from whatever you're reading and apply it in your life, you know, like you're probably hopefully doing for this YouTube video. And, you know, the more you read, you know, the higher quality stuff you read, your focus will become very sharp and it'll happen very fast. You know, if you can read like a book every like 2-ish weeks, you're doing so much more focus wise than 99% of people. Like 2 weeks to read one book, that might not seem impressive for some people, but that is very impressive. And your information, you know, knowledge of the world and everything is going to improve alongside your focus. So yeah, reading, great for your focus. Again, if you're not already reading, you have to do this. It's just essential. And yeah, great tool to build your focus. Another thing I want to mention is meditation. Now, I think way back I've made a video on this. I'll put a little link here if you want to watch that. The main thing about meditation, which it does to build your focus, is you're forced to have no stimulus. You're forced to sit there, eyes closed, and your main aim is to try and not think about anything. Focus on your breath, focus on how you're feeling or whatever. I don't know what type of meditation. That's more mindfulness, but meditation is more so trying to focus and stay focused for however long you're going to do it for. Now, initially, you're probably not going to be able to do it for too long. Maybe you can. If you feel like you can do it for like 10-15 minutes straight off the bat, then if you feel like you can do it for like 10-15 minutes right off the bat, then go for it. You know, you don't have to work your way up. If you feel like if you have enough confidence to go for those higher things at the very start, do that if you feel like you can. But I imagine most people will probably have to work their way up to like meditating to 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes. So you'll have to start from maybe 5, maybe even less, maybe 2-3 minutes, and then build up your, you know, focus enough to where you can do that for 10, 15. Eventually that'll be a breeze. You know, 15 minutes will fly by like that. It always does when you meditate, you know, because when you're in such a state of like focus, or, you know, in that, you know, locked in state, if you know what I mean, like things tend to go by very fast. You'll notice that. And when you start to notice that, that means your focus is also building alongside your amount of meditation time. You know, that's another good thing about meditation that I've just realized. It's easy to track your progress, because if you feel like you're being able to meditate for longer, then you know that you're making progress on your focus. It's harder to do that with reading, because the best way you can track it is just by reading more books. Like, you're not going to be, there's no like skill tree where you can just look at your focus and realize, oh my days, I put a lot of skill points in there. Like, you can't see that. But with meditation, it's easier to track your progress because, for one, if your meditation app has like daily streaks, like I use Medito, I've also used one called Balance. You might be a different kind of, you might not like the vibe those ones are going for. There's a bunch you can find on the App Store, or you can even literally just set a 10-minute timer on your phone if you want, and just go until it goes off. But yeah, it's easy to track your progress because you get the streaks. You remember like how long you've been doing it for. You can always up the amount of time. So if you're not already meditating and you want to build your focus, you kind of have to. It just brings a lot more clarity to everything. Aside from building your focus, meditation is one of the few habits which give you like much more clarity and guidance into yourself, into your, a bit of introspection. And if you ever have any like anxieties or anything like that, a lot of it can be subdued by just 10 minutes of meditation. It really is that simple. It's a beautiful habit. It's easy to track your progress. You build your focus, and you don't have to be like me, who've been scrolling on TikTok in between Overwatch queue lobbies. Not that anyone plays that anymore. It's all about Marvel Rivals. You have to take action towards building your focus, because it's a skill these days. Focus would not have been a skill 100 years ago. People would just naturally conversate and stay present. People didn't have the luxury or the detriment, depending on how you see it, of social media and TikTok. People didn't have that stuff, so focus wasn't a skill. But today, in this day and age, which you and I are living through, we have to build this skill. We have to treat it as a skill, and just by staying consistent with focus building habits, you'll see yourself in the top 1% bracket of people with focus within no time. I promise you. So yeah, that's everything from me today. Please take this video and apply it in your life. I want you to build your focus, and yeah, that's enough from me. Strive for greatness, and don't be a vape puffing nerd.